Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel, on Christmas week. Hope everybody's gotten their shopping done. I finally got my shopping done. Of course, it's easy for me. I do mine mostly by computer, being that my family lives elsewhere except for my brother. So that's the only way I can do it. And it saves a lot of time. And when you do it that way, you can understand why so many brick-and-mortar stores are having a tougher time, it seems. They lose ground to cyber shopping year after year after year. It's a combination of things. First of all, internet shopping is so much easier, first of all. Second of all, because we've had a population that has moved so much over the last 20, 30, 40 years, families are spread out. So it really doesn't pay to go to the store and then ship something. That's probably the most inefficient kind of shopping that you can do. Whereas it's easier if you know what somebody wants, if you've been talking to them, a family member throughout the year. You just go online and have some store ship it from a warehouse somewhere. And so the retail outlet suffers because of that. So there's a couple things going on there in the 21st century when you hear about retail stores losing ground. It's a factor of ease, but it's also a factor of our changing population. In fact, I was just reading an article within the last couple days, the Census Bureau noting how much the population continues to go from the northeast to the south and the southwest. Very interesting. So before I get started, as I always do, you can go to edwarddentzel.com. I'm going to switch it up today. edwarddentzel.com, where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can find my highlight reel there if you click on the tab that says promo. You can do that. You can go to edwarddentzel.com/book to download the first chapter of my upcoming novel called The Comebacks. That'll be out sometime in 2016. Still working on it, but I thought that all of you might want to get a little taste of what the book is about. The first chapter is kind of long, so it's not chintzy. It's not a cheap gift. It's a somewhat expensive gift, being that the first chapter has a lot of words in it, and you get introduced to all the characters. You can go to Amazon.com, speaking of books, where you can find all of my older books, my Govicide series and my book Distant. You can download them to your Kindle in a matter of moments. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. Have I mentioned that I now have over 4,000 followers on Twitter? Yep, been working at that kind of hard. Been putting some time in there. You can also find my shows at Podbean, SoundCloud, and at YouTube. What I do there is, if you hear the show, for example, 11 p.m., Monday through Friday on Red State Talk Radio, the next day you will be able to find that show at those locations and at my website, edwarddentzel.com. So if you ever miss a show, you know where to go to hear a replay of it. You can also find me in the iTunes store in the podcast section. You can find me at LinkedIn and find me at Facebook. So let's get to the show. I want to talk about Ted Cruz and his kids and this cartoon that the Washington Post did. I saw this commercial a few days ago. I think I saw it on, can you call it a commercial? It's a YouTube video that had to do with big government, and it's a telling of the night before Christmas from a conservative point of view. And it's Ted Cruz and his two daughters and his wife. They're sitting on a couch, and it's kind of funny. However, even as I watched it, I was saying this probably isn't the best choice. Once again, as a conservative, I found it humorous. And I think that the more conservatives do little videos like that, the better it is for us. But before I go into this, though, I should tell you something regarding children just in general. and this is going to offend a lot of you out there, why people put their child's and children's pictures on the internet, I will never understand. It is one of the weirdest things. Now, granted, it's easy for me to talk since I don't have any kids. But for all of you parents out there, you do know that there are a bunch of creeps online, first of all. Second of all, you do know that any picture that you post there, they can then download to their own computer and use for whatever means. Thirdly, I'm telling you, other people do not care about what your kids are doing as much as you do. Most people don't care. They care about what their own kids are doing. They necessarily don't care about what your kids are doing. So you putting stuff up about what your kids are doing, it doesn't have quite the effect that you'd think. So putting that all together, I'm a guy, if I had children and if I had a Facebook page, their picture would never be up there. They just wouldn't. To me, it's just weird. I don't know why anybody else would ever care about anything that my kids are doing and what they look like and what they're wearing. They care about it maybe for a second, and then they go on with the rest of their lives. That's the world that I live in. Especially, once again, considering the communication that we have in the 21st century. If you want to send pictures of your kids to your parents, to the grandparents, and they live far away, you can do that in an email. You can do that on a text. You do not need to post it somewhere where anybody can see it. Once again, this is how I start thinking about that, and I start thinking about all the perverts that are out there. And I know you hate to think of the world that way, but you are the ones who are enabling them to get pictures of your kids. Just remember that. They're not stealing them. You're putting the pictures out there to use for like I said, for whatever perverted means that they want to use them for. So that's the world that I live in. That's just who I am. Now, having said that, you can imagine then that Ted Cruz putting his children in a YouTube video like that is going to bother me. Outside of whatever the politics of it is. I mean, as an adult, I'm even bothered when privately owned businesses, for example, on TV, do ads, and the owners put their kids in the ad and put their grandkids. That is so... Do they have no shame? Do kids really need to be brought into the business world? They don't know what they're saying when they go out there. They're just reading from a cue card. The owner of the business is just looking for some sympathy, or isn't that cute, or whatever. It has no business to me in business or in politics. That is the world of adults. So when you introduce, by choice, your children into something, then you should have to put up with anything that comes from it. I know that this is a minority conservative view. I know that there's a double standard out there between the children of liberal politicians and the children of conservative politicians. I understand that. Well, if I know that, then Ted Cruz knows that. And his campaign manager and everybody else knows that. And they have to understand that if they put conservative children in an ad, then somewhere, somehow, those kids are going to get made fun of. That's just the way it is. And here's what's safe to say. If he doesn't put his kids in that ad, then the Washington Post doesn't do what it does. In fact, he could probably go the whole campaign season without mentioning his kids once. Once again, I understand there's a double standard. But I'm talking about it from my point of view of putting a line between the world of adults and the world of children. On top of that, in my opinion, for those of you who think that I'm in the tank for Ted Cruz or whoever else, I have a lot of criticism for Ted Cruz and how he handled this afterwards. When the Washington Post put up this cartoon showing his kids as monkeys, you cannot criticize them. I know you want to. I know you think that's the right thing to do. I know you feel like you have to defend what you did and how the Washington Post has no taste, which is something that isn't news. But you can't allow these people to get under your skin. You can't show them which buttons to push. Keep in mind, they wouldn't have done it had you not put your kids in that video. Now, if you wanted to do something like that, you know what you should have done. In retrospect, if you thought, well, wouldn't it be neat if it's Ted Cruz reading these different books and pretending it's a night before Christmas and making fun of liberals, you know what you should have done? You should have dished out a couple bucks for child actors, create some sort of, I don't know, preschool setting, second grade setting, where Ted Cruz is up sitting in a chair and there's a bunch of kids and he's reading to all of them. If that's what you wanted to do, then if the Washington Post wanted to make fun of it, then they would have been making fun of somebody else's kids. Instead of yours. Instead of his. That's what you should have done. In retrospect, hindsight's 2020. Now, regarding the Washington Post and their cartoon, is it tasteless? Of course, but that's the Washington Post. That's the New York Times. That's the LA Times. That's the whole liberal media establishment in the United States. They're all tasteless. What did you think they were going to do? How I would have handled it? Had I made the unbelievable mistake of putting my kids, who I don't have, in an ad like that, and the Washington Post portrayed them as monkeys, you know what I would have said? Just to make sure. Now, behind the scenes, I would have been fuming, even though I'd probably know that it was my fault in the first place. Because that's just the kind of guy that I am. I hate setting myself up for something like that. I should be able to think ahead better than that. And that's the way I look at Ted Cruz. He should have been able to forecast what was going to happen to this. And if he did forecast it and did it anyway, well, then he's weirder than I could ever think. That if he kind of like baited the Washington Post into this by using his children, that's even worse. And I hope that's not the case. I hope he just didn't realize where this was going to go. I'd rather think him stupid than evil. But even though I would have been fuming about it behind the scenes, you never can let these people show that they get to you. You can't show them where your buttons are. Even though it's pretty easy to push a parent's buttons when you start criticizing their kids and making fun of their kids. But if it's in this way, because they're kind of, the Washington Post article, the picture made it, well, they're these performing monkeys. Ted Cruz wants to be president, and now he has his kids out there just doing what he says to help himself out. They're just his dancing monkeys for him. You know what I would have said as a father? As much as I would have been fuming underneath, I would have gone out there and said, yeah, they are my monkeys. Yeah, they are my monkeys. I call them my little monkeys when you guys aren't around at home. You know, they're always jumping around and squealing and laughing and everything. You know what? Maybe that cartoon, it's not so bad. Now, I wouldn't necessarily been believing that in my head. And I would have been dropping F-bombs all over the place behind the scenes. But out here in public, you just say, yeah, you know what? Now that the Washington Post put it that way, you know what? Maybe that is right. They are kind of my little monkeys. Like, they're always swinging from things and jumping around the house and rolling down the stairs and making funny noises, and they're giggling, and I giggle back at them. Maybe that's a good way. Maybe that's kind of a funny way. Not that I necessarily agree with the entire cartoon, but that's kind of an interesting way to think about it. and you kind of just turn right into it and show that you have a sense of humor and show that you're not going to be baited into something like that. Instead, the Washington Post gets the exact response that it wants. It wants to be seen as being on the opposite side of conservatives. So that's why they did it. And I know they apologized, some of them. The person who drew it's not apologizing. But the editors are apologizing. They don't really mean it. They don't mean it. Ted Cruz should have just gone out and said, maybe I know a lot of people are portraying this as being bad taste, but they are my little monkeys. And they may think that my fellow conservatives may think that I'm owed an apology. I'm not owed an apology. I'm not owed an apology. Now, in the back of my head, I'd be thinking that's the last time I'm ever going to put my daughters in an ad or in a video. But you cannot let these people bait you into this stuff. Here's the thing. Here's the most important part about all of this. Nobody's votes and point of view is going to change anything in politics because of this. No liberal is going to look at what the Washington Post did and say, "Oh my, that liberal media, I just can't believe them. That's it, I'm voting conservative." Nobody is going to do that. So it doesn't pay to argue with them. It doesn't. Once again, should have never done it in the first place. You want to appear with your wife? I get it. She's an adult. But not your kids. You want to do something like that? Keep your kids off the video. Bring in child actors. Dish out a couple bucks from your campaign. Shoot the dang thing. And then if any problems come from it, then they're making fun of somebody else's kids, not your own. This is the way you have to be efficient. And to get caught up in these arguments that are not going to sway voters one way or the other is a waste of time. Spent a whole day and it's still going on that for their campaign. And you have Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio and all these people, then they feel that they have to respond. Whereas if Ted Cruz just comes out and says, "That's just kind of funny. Not exactly what I intended, but kind of funny." Knowing, though, that, and plus you get to show your personality, you'd show that you can take a joke, you'd be able to show that you know that they're trying to get under your skin and you're not going to allow them. Because this is what happens. That apology, a week from now, everybody's going to forget about this. But you spent a day on it. And politicians, keep your kids out of it. I know you can't help what the press is going to do and the media is going to do. But that doesn't mean then that you can just do whatever you want. Well, if they're going to make fun of my kids, I might as well just put my kids in all my ads. Don't do it. I feel the same way about parents who drag their kids to anti-GMO rallies. And the kids are little kids there, or Black Lives Matter, or any political cause on either side. Keep the kids out of it. It just disgusts me. Why? I want to go to this rally and I can't find a babysitter. Well, then don't go. The movement will be fine without you. You can make it next time. And like I said, this goes for either side, both conservatives or liberals, pro-life, pro-gun, whatever the case may be. This is big, putting your big boy pants on, this stuff. Hey, I'm a conservative, and I can tell you, in my house, I don't ever remember talking about politics in my house until I was in at least 20 years old. My parents are conservative, I'm conservative, but I can tell you, I don't ever remember talking politics when I was in junior high school. My parents never went to any political rallies, so they didn't have to drag me along, and my politics turned out just fine. keep kids out of it. Instead, what you should be doing, you're all worried about dragging them here to this rally and getting them involved in politics. Here's something that will save you a lot of time. Don't send them to public schools where their heads are going to get filled full of liberal crap. How about that? How about that? No, that's probably too hard. Instead, you want to send them to the liberal place and then drag them to the conservative place. I don't understand. I don't understand. And so I'm not totally on board with how conservatives have been handling this. I know all the stuff about Barack Obama and how his daughters are supposed to be. It's not fair. Why do we keep trying to fight for what's fair when we know it's never going to be that way? Life is not fair. Serial killers get away with it, never get caught. They die before we ever even know who they are, and little kids get cancer. The world is not fair. So we should stop trying to fight for it. Just try to win. Just try to fight against evil. And the way you do not do it is putting your kids in political ads. Let's move on to something else. Along those lines, and probably another good example of how not to handle something, now that I cracked on Ted Cruz for a little bit. Donald Trump, in his response to Hillary Clinton claiming that ISIS is using his videos to recruit people and how he demanded an apology. This is another mistake. See, this is another example of where a Republican just can't laugh about something. At some point, you have to realize that is the best response. But it kind of feels, because we, in general, think that the media is so biased that we have to fight every single time. Never for once thinking, you know what, maybe it's best off that I just show my sense of humor and kind of just slough this off. Because the contention is so outrageous. Did Donald Trump really have to ask for it? Because asking for an apology, you know you're not going to get it. Now, the Washington Post gave one out, but remember, the person who actually drew that picture did not apologize. The person personally responsible, not apologizing. Totally thought it was the right thing to do. You have to remember that. Whereas Hillary Clinton's campaign, them offering an apology to Donald Trump, once again, this is a situation where nobody's mind is going to be changed one way or the other. And it makes Donald Trump look weak when he asks for an apology from her. Does he not understand that? Does he not understand that he's not messing around with Jeb Bush. He's not messing around with Ben Carson. He's messing around with the Democrat version of him. And the Clintons have been playing this game for a lot longer than he has. Because what happens is when you offer an apology and you don't get it, at least in the political world, it doesn't cost the person who doesn't go along with the apology and doesn't say, you know what, Donald, I'm sorry. That, by not saying they're sorry, by Hillary Clinton not saying that she's sorry, it actually gives her more power. And she knows that. That Donald Trump doesn't know that is a problem. The other problem is he is incapable of letting at least even the smallest of dings get by him. And in that way, as I told you months ago, he's exactly like Barack Obama. No sense of humor unless somebody else is the brunt of a joke. Now, I know, do I think that she's telling the truth? Of course not. ISIS doesn't need any help recruiting people, unfortunately. It's not like they're test marketing Donald Trump videos over there. It's not like they're having, like they do for movies. They send it out to a test screen to see what's good about it and what's bad about it. And people have these little notepads, what they like and what they don't like. That isn't what ISIS is doing. Well, if we use that Donald Trump video, what he said a couple weeks ago, our recruitment actually goes up by 10%. ISIS doesn't do that. All right. So, that he is incapable of letting even something like that get by shows you that if he were president, it would just be the same as Barack Obama, except from the other side. And that's not really something that I want to live through, but I guess I'll just have to manage it if Donald Trump becomes president. What he did for the guy who's always talking about being strong and being tough, offering in this case, in this particular case, now this isn't workplace stuff. This isn't a situation where Donald Trump is in one cubicle and Hillary Clinton is in the next cubicle and they're just regular people and she says something bad about him and everybody else in the office place hears it and he offers an apology and she doesn't give it back. And because in those general cases, if Donald Trump is liked, Hillary would be expected to offer back and say, you know what, Donald, I'm sorry I said that. This is not that. This is not the public. This is in a way that I can't use politics or public life and compare it to politics. It's not the same. It's just not. Whereas if that kind of situation is at your job, you know that eventually the person who made the outrageous statement would have to give an apology or they'd be shunned by the rest of the workforce, the other fellow employees. This is politics. The truth is, Donald Trump should have understood before he ever said that, you know what? I'm not going to gain any followers by asking her for an apology. And she's not going to lose any followers by not giving me an apology. That's what should have been going through his head. And instead he should, that Hillary Clinton, she's so funny. She is so funny. I didn't know. That's what Donald Trump should have done. She is so funny. If she actually believes something like that. I didn't know that Hillary Clinton had such a depth of a sense of humor. That's how he should have. Now, I know inside he'd be boiling. I know he would be. And I know he was. But for the guy who always talks about being strong, he got put in his place by Hillary Clinton by her just keeping her mouth shut. She didn't even have to say anything after that ISIS video. And dare I say it, if it is a contest between him and her, that's what you would see from the day the contest would start. Because I think the Clinton camp already knows the buttons to push with Donald Trump. And you know what it is? Donald Trump can't joke about Donald Trump. He takes himself way too seriously. And it's something that Republicans did not do to Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012. Because that kind of little stuff, it can matter. Now, whether that would have changed any of both of those elections, I don't know. But it's something that I saw about Barack Obama from day one. This is a humorless guy. This is humorless. He will tell jokes at the expense of his kids, at the expense of his wife, for everybody but himself. Too much ego going on there. So now he's left standing out there waiting for an apology, and Hillary Clinton's moved on. She's done her damage. She now has the upper hand. So in both these cases, to start this show off, in Ted Cruz's case, he made mistakes in what he did in the first place and in the response to it. And Donald Trump made a big mistake in his response to Hillary Clinton. Only offer up an apology. I deserve an apology if you think that you're going to get it. And he's not. And that he didn't know that should tell you something about him. Well, I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
Real radio for real Americans. Red State Talk Radio.
This is Brigitte Gabrielle from actforamerica.org. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do not go to bed every night absolutely fatigued from trying to restore America from the destruction that is taking place, then you're simply not working hard enough. Arm yourself with knowledge so that you too can act for America by listening to Red State Talk Radio. Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. RedStateTalkRadio.com. Lock it in and rip off the knob.
I can't defend my family because I live in Chicago.
I am free to defend my family with my AR-15 or handgun because I live in Wyoming.
I can't even protect myself if I'm attacked because I live in D.C.
I carry my 9mm in my purse anywhere I go in Texas.
I can't protect my small retail shop here in Brooklyn.
We keep guns behind the counter at our shop in Oklahoma. Only had to show it once.
Do you see a pattern?
Demand equal gun rights in America. Go to SAF.org now.
My name is Courtney Luster. I'm 21, well-educated, and unemployed American. I happen to be black, so I'm in the highest unemployment segment of the population, black youth unemployment. Notice I don't refer to myself as African American because I'm an American first. I'm a proud American who happens to have black skin. So please explain to me where African American fits into that equation. You're right, it doesn't. For over 60 years, the Democrat Party has used my fellow black Americans to maintain power in the federal and state governments. Why do I say that? Because I read history. While many of my friends are watching mindless videos, I choose to listen to Red State Talk Radio. Why? Because I want to educate myself, not entertain myself. Red State Talk Radio, America's premier conservative talk radio network. Hey, all you black American youth, be a Frederick Douglass Republican, not an Al Sharpton race pimp. Educate yourself. Listen to RedStateTalkRadio.com.
This is Michael Cutler, retired senior special agent with the former INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Service. You should know that I'm also a lifelong Democrat, but ladies and gentlemen, the mainstream media has completely failed the American people. That's why, despite being a lifelong Democrat, I listen to Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. Lock it in and rip off the knob.
We're back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to continue to talk about Donald Trump because there is another part to this. This is like Act 2 of this play. And first of all, he wanted to get an apology. He didn't get it. When he didn't get it then, he responded by using, can I say it on the radio? I think I can. The schlong statement. And the less I use the word schlong in my life, I think the better off I'm going to be. I don't think I've ever written that word, ever. I don't think. I know what it means. We're not going to go into that. But this is as much as I ever want to talk about this word ever again. In any case. So in response, when he doesn't get an apology from her, he thinks, well, then I got to do something myself. And he comes out with this schlong statement, which once again helps no one. It doesn't gain any followers. It doesn't turn anybody off. It's just right there in the middle. He's going to get criticism from it from a media which is already on her side. And you just can't let it go. When he saw that it made him look weak, maybe, He thought, well, I need to get back at her. I need to say something. We all know. So he comes out with the schlong statement. This is, unfortunately, it seems like too many Republicans want this to all go in that direction. Not understanding that when you do that, you are playing into Democrat hands. If you stick to issues, we win. You go down and start calling people names and putting your kids in advertisements, we lose. We win on substance. We lose when it comes to the more artistic sides of politics. The flowery language, the flowery videos, all of that. We lose that. We win when we stick to the issues. And dare I say it, putting kids in videos and asking for apologies and using the schlong word are not our strong suits. So we're totally off the rails here. Nothing of substance. And now Hillary Clinton knows exactly what she needs to do should Donald Trump be the nominee. See, this is the problem. And I've been meaning to say this regarding Donald Trump, is that, you know who he's kind of like Howard Stern. Howard Stern, if he wants somebody to come on his show, even though I know that he's on satellite radio and we just totally forget about him these days. Unless you have satellite radio and come across him, you even forget he exists anymore. Even though I know he's making tons of money and good for him. But if he wants somebody to come on his show, he will demonize that person. He will talk about that person. He will not let up until that person shows up. He'll send his people out to hunt the person down and harass them at events and famous musicians, actors, athletes. That's what he does until they come on the show. And if they don't come on the show, he'll just continue to trash them, and he has a reliable army of people who will do it as well. And the mistake people make is that when you get into if you want to try to go toe-to-toe, getting into the gutter with Howard Stern, like if one of these celebrities tries to turn it around and do something to him, they are going to lose because Howard Stern and his people are going to go further than anybody else. Now, what Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand is Donald Trump's kind of like Howard Stern. He will demonize people. He will call them names. He will make outrageous statements, and he thinks that he's the Howard Stern where if we're going to get into the gutter, he thinks that he can win. He's wrong. He's wrong. Because you know who already is there and has set up a whole fortress? The Democrat Party. And specifically, the Clintons. Starting back in the 1990s. And so Donald Trump, he can get away with that on the Republican side in these debates or with Megyn Kelly or whoever else because we just play the game over here a little bit different. So he's like the big fish in the small pond. But getting out and fighting against Democrats and trying to use those same tactics is not going to work. And at some point, he's going to have to fall back on what we already believe is our strong suit is policy, and policy is not Donald Trump's strong suit. No matter what people may say about his attitude toward immigration, policy is not his strength. As much as he talks about strength, his policy and his understanding of all of it is not his strength. He says he's going to hire people. Well, who is that? Who are those people? Are they conservative? Are they liberal? Do they know what they're talking about? What is their motivation? I don't know. This is why his explanation for all of this doesn't work. That, I'll just get a bunch of smart people. Oh, really? Who are those smart people? Who are they? Because I'm guessing that whoever you get will be a reflection of what you think. And we're not exactly sure what you think, Donald, because you've kind of changed your mind a lot of times over the last 10 years. So who are those people? See, this is what we worry about. It does matter what the candidate thinks about all sorts of different topics. I know that in the end, that any president is going to have advisors, he's going to have a cabinet, he's going to have military leaders who are going to advise him on foreign policy, he's going to have a couple economists. I get it all. But in the end, those people are only there because the president has chosen them. Well, who's Donald Trump going to choose? Who knows? So it's kind of like he wants to have it both ways. He's an expert, but he can get into the gutter as well. And I'm telling you, I don't think he's an expert at either. He only looks good right now because of his competition, who communicate a little bit differently than he does. Because frankly, on the issues, he's getting his butt kicked from. He's winning the entertainment part of this so far, but he's losing the policy part, no matter, once again, what he may say about building a fence a mile high. Right? So he thinks he's Howard Stern. He thinks he can outgross anybody. And already we've seen that he can't. Just in this small exchange with Hillary Clinton. She beat him. She is the Howard Stern. The Democrats are the Howard Stern. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is the Howard Stern. Barack Obama is the Howard Stern. Republicans are not. And that's why you have to stay away from it. You know, the best thing, for example, to continue the Howard Stern, if you don't want to be on Howard Stern and you don't want to have him hound him, you know what? You just stay away. If you're famous, you just stay away. You try to act above it. You cannot turn on him. You cannot start dishing stuff back at him because then you are playing his game. You don't play his game. You be polite. You laugh it off. You back channels your people and his people, something like that. But getting into the gutter is the wrong play. And the problem is, I think, with Donald Trump, as much as I criticize him, this is another point. I just don't think he doesn't know what he doesn't know. I think he knows everything. And the more he behaves, the more we see he doesn't know it. That's what scares me more about anything, not just in politics. The person to claim to know stuff, but as soon as something bad happens, they look nervous. Then you find out they really don't have the answers. Remember, the quickest way to learning something is admitting that you don't know something. And it just isn't reassuring to me that when somebody says that, well, I'll just get somebody else to be interested in it. I'll just get an expert. That is a lack of concern. That not just shows a lack of knowledge, it shows a lack of curiosity, a lack of concern, which also bothers me from somebody who is running for president. But whether we know it or not, anybody wants to admit it or not, Ted Cruz has lost the exchange, in my opinion, with the Washington Post. Ted Cruz, or Donald Trump, has lost this short exchange regarding ISIS and recruitment videos with Hillary Clinton. No matter what else is going on, no matter what other conservatives say, they've lost it. Not that they've lost voters or anything, not anything like that. But this is a sign of things to come, and at some point, this kind of exchange is going to matter, and it's going to matter more than it does right now. And unfortunately, I think they'll keep playing from the same playbook, and I think that's a losing playbook. I know we want to be all nice and ask for apologies and defend our children. There's a different way to handle this where you can still maintain your sense of fair game and playing fair and coming across as a good guy than the way that these two have gone about how they've handled these situations. My opinion. I know how I handle it. I mean, within the last few days, do you know how many people have dropped F-bombs on me on Twitter? That starts to happen as you get more followers on Twitter. You start getting a lot of more people getting mad at you. I don't take them on. I don't ask for an apology, nothing. I just say, oh, you're so good looking. Oh, you're so good looking. Oh, you're so funny. That's how I try to handle it. I don't ask for an apology. I don't say, do you really, kiss your mother with that mouth? I don't say anything like that. Oh, you're so good looking. I get that from Seinfeld. Just might as well not even get into it with them. Don't ask for an apology. Don't try to outgross them or anything. If somebody wants to have a real conversation about policy, a constructive adult conversation, then we can do that. But if you're going to start dropping F-bombs and things, then I'm just going to kind of tune you out. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. He should have just tuned Hillary Clinton out. Ted Cruz should have just laughed it off and kept moving. I'm going to move on to something else. This comes from MarketWatch.com. The average American has less than $1,000 in their savings, according to them. And they have like a chart that breaks down the ages and Generation Xers, and that's a little distressing. The average net worth of an American is a lot lower than you think it is if you ever want to do that research into that. And this reminds me, and I've brought this up a few times since I started doing this show, which is a major point that not one politician on my side has had the courage to bring up, but it's true. And this is one of those uncomfortable truths that we as conservatives should talk more about. And the fact is, we cannot have a government that's responsible with our money if we are not responsible with our money. Remember, the money the government has is ours. It took it from us by force. You don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. Business taxes, income taxes, whatever the case may be. But that's our money that it's spending. It doesn't seem to use that money very well. It comes up with budgets that are a lot higher than the money that it collects. However, it seems that the average American, he or she doesn't handle his or her own money very well either. And I remember going back to about 9 years ago when Matt Drudge used to do his radio show, and it's unfortunately doesn't because he did a really good job with it. It was on, as I remember, it was on Sunday nights, and this would have been around 2006 when we had budget problems even before the problems that started with Barack Obama. And he had made the point, it was the first time that I'd ever heard anybody say this, and it really stuck with me, is that you cannot expect a government to be responsible for its money when your average American has all this credit card debt, doesn't save money, spends beyond their means, gets into bad investment problems, goes bankrupt, on and on and on. In fact, you look at the average American, and you'd never think that they have any accounting abilities at all. Furthermore, if you had a citizenry, that's a tough word for me to say, if you had citizens who were responsible for their money, didn't spend beyond their means, didn't run their credit card debt up, only bought things with cash, knew how to save, you wouldn't have a government that's $18 trillion in debt. Because you know what? Because the citizens would then understand a problem when they see it. The problem is, I think your average American says, you know what? Yeah, that national debt's a problem. But you know what? I have debt too. I got this credit card debt. It's like $50,000. I have a school loan that I'm going to be paying on for the next 30 years. I have less than $1,000 in my savings. I have no money left over at the end of the month after I pay all my bills. So it's not crazy to me then that the government is kind of in the same situation I am. But we would have a lot more outrage in this country if people, and once again, this isn't something that the government controls. You have control over what you spend, where you live, what kind of car you have, the kind of job you have, how many hours you want to work. That's all kind of up to you, no matter the kind of economic recession that we are in. And I know that there are people getting their finances into order every day because I know how popular Dave Ramsey's talk show is. Listened to by millions of people, and I know he's helped a lot of people get back to, what does he call it, financial health. If we had people that were good with money, we would have a government that's good with money. And that's why I've always told all of you, as much as we complain about the federal government is a reflection of us. Like it or not. I know it's easy for us to blame it on politicians, Barack Obama, this program, that program. You know what? In the end, we're responsible for it. They get away with it because we allow them to get away with it. They spend too much. You know why? Because we love it. Not me personally, but you might as well just throw me in there. We as citizens love what they spend the money on because we're not really willing to get rid of all of those programs that are bankrupting our country. However, if we took care of our money, then these programs wouldn't be as big a deal to get rid of, or at least get shrunk, to make them smaller. Wouldn't be as big of a deal. But it's absolutely, read this article, less than $1,000 in savings, and that's exactly what I think of. We want the federal government to magically fix its financial problems, whereas the average citizen wants to go from month to month thinking, that's just the way to live. Being in debt the whole time, leaving debt to my kids if I die, going into bankruptcy so some of my bills can't be paid, and so those people, they get screwed. What kind of government do you think you're going to get when citizens think like that? You're going to get what we have. Don't think that the federal government has become the way it is by accident, or by the dead of night, like under everybody's nose. It's that way because it's a reflection of us. Can we look in the mirror? Can we? Because I think the day that more Americans understand that, instead of always pointing the finger somewhere else, we'll get it fixed. But that's hard to do. You have to admit that you're the problem, and people don't like to do that because it's so easy to blame everything on somebody else. And dare I say it, the problem won't be fixed until we take ownership of it. One more thing before I go. Where do I want to go? Oh, I made a fantastic joke on Twitter earlier today. Fantastic joke. And it has to do with Hillary Clinton and her being everybody's abuela, which I guess is Spanish for grandmother. You'd think I'd know that after taking Spanish, but I didn't. Top 10, it was something like the reasons that Hillary Clinton is your abuela. And of course, this is something in trying to appease Spanish-speaking people in the United States, maybe illegal immigrants. Let's just put it that way. Why made the joke? Well, I made the joke. Hillary Clinton is not your abuela. But Bill Clinton could absolutely certainly be your padre. And people loved that joke. Loved it. Got retweeted a bunch of times. Very happy. I just was off the top of my head. Maybe somebody thought of it before I did. Of course, this is a play on the idea that Bill Clinton sleeps around a lot. Do I have to explain a joke? You hate when you have to explain a joke. It's not very comedian-like. But just playing off this idea of how much Bill Clinton sleeps around. Maybe he's gotten some women pregnant and there are kids running around who he may very well be their padre. But I got to go. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio, and I will talk to you again very soon.